Hello, my name is Francis Widdowson, and today I would like to produce a video dealing with the third anniversary of my firing. 3 years ago today, exactly, on December 20th, 2021, I was fired from Mount Royal University. And it was a shocking sequence of events, in my view, that happened on December 20th, 2021. And since 3 years have passed, since the arbitration decision has been handed down and the arbitrator has a view on this situation, I thought it would be a useful exercise to go through all the things that happened 3 years ago today. And so what occurred is I was invigilating an exam, and then it's a very normal day. And as I was walking back to my office after invigilating the exam, I was accosted and lured into a classroom. And in my view, I was forcibly confined by the administrator, Mike Quinn. Anyway, the arbitrator didn't see anything wrong with this, which is, in my view, is very surprising. And because it's now 3 years later, and I've thought about this a lot, obviously, I still think this was a terrible thing that happened 3 years ago, and I wanted to produce the items that I have regarding what occurred that day and let audience members decide for themselves what they think about this situation. So, what I would like to do is I would like to share my screen, and what we're going to see here is the wokeacademy.info site. So for people who are unfamiliar with the wokeacademy.info, it's a website which has a number of things about my case. For example, it has the arbitration decision, all the documents pertaining to the arbitration decision. It also has a lot of documents pertaining to my firing, the events that led up to my firing. And so you can find out a lot more about my case at www.wokeacademy.info. So that's the website. What we're concerned about today, however, is this particular post that has been compiled about what happened on the date of December 20th, 2021. So 3 years ago today. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to enter into this post, and it's talking about the 3-year anniversary. And it's 3:00 p.m. now. And at this time, 3 years ago, I was invigilating the exam that I was talking about. And the pictures at the top here are all the people that were involved either directly as to what happened that day, or in the events that had a direct bearing on those circumstances. And these are Mike Quinn, who was the vice provost and associate vice president academic on the far left-hand side, Tim Raleigh, who's the president and vice chancellor, Sarah Gibson, who is the compensation and benefits specialist at Mount Royal University, Elizabeth Evans, who was the MRVU provost and interim vice president academic, Tanya Snow, who I never had met until that night, the evening of December 20th, who is a consultant who was brought in for some strange reason. And then we have Amy Nixon, who's the general counsel, and Jennifer Pettit, who is the Dean of Arts. And Jennifer Pettit, I'll have a lot to say about her in the future, because she's one of the major reasons why the environment at Mount Royal became poisoned. Anyway, but that's for another video. We want to just stick to what happened 3 years ago today on December 20th, 2021. So just to give you an overview, I'm going to go into the sequence of events that you can see, and then you can think a little bit about, is this a normal sequence of events to happen at an academic institution? This is an important question. So at around 5:30 p.m., I was lured into a classroom after hours without union representation. And this was a great surprise to me because Article 25 of my collective agreement, so this is my collective agreement, says that an employee shall have the right to have a member of the association executive present at any meeting that the employee believes might be the basis of discipline. And since this meeting was issuing termination, it seems to be considered to be a disciplinary meeting. But in the arbitration process, and I have notes on this, there was a lot of discussion about whether this was a meeting or not. So it was just to hand off this termination notice to me. But I was brought into a classroom, asked to sit down with 3 other administrators. So, and we're going to be discussing things. So it seems odd that there would be the position that that wasn't a meeting, that this was just handing me a document. Anyway, that seems to be the argument and that makes it exempt from the collective agreement, according to MRU, and the arbitrator seems to have accepted MRU's logic on this, which the arbitrator basically accepted MRU's position on everything except for whether the discipline was proportionate or not. And I think he couldn't have decided otherwise because the case is so absurd. I keep on hoping that someone rational is going to enter into this and say, whoa, this is just ridiculous what's happened with respect to all these factors, but that hasn't happened yet. Anyway, for people who are interested in my account of these events that I actually recorded when I sat down with the union the next day on December 21st, there's a recording of that, and you can listen to that on this post. And then, this is something that is very, very upsetting to me. On page 239 of the arbitration decision, and you can see this on the website if you just go into those top menu items I was talking about. Arbitrator David Philip Jones, in dismissing grievance number 10, which was the grievance that was asserting that I had been subjected to an unsafe and unhealthy workplace. He said that this was not unsafe or unhealthy on December 20th, 2021, what occurred, the sequence of events, and that I was wrong in thinking that the collective agreement gave me a right to have a faculty association representative present. So in future instances, faculty members won't have to have a representative there. And he said that my reaction was neither proportionate nor appropriate. And this is really, really, I'm amazed by this assertion. And I'm especially upset because I had to bare my soul in the arbitration hearings about this. I had to reveal details about what had happened historically to me in a similar circumstance, and to have him react and see it, everything that I had to do in the arbitration over 8 hearing days to just dismiss it like that is, I find, amazing. I still have a hard time accepting that he actually came to that conclusion. But of course, I think almost all of his decision, David Philip Jones never explains his reasoning about anything, which I find is atrocious. Here we are paying who knows how much, hundreds of thousands of dollars, definitely, for this supposed expert in administrative law to give his reasons, and then he just basically regurgitates everything that MRU says or everything that MRU's investigators that MRU paid for say. So it really was, I think, the decision was not impressive in any way. And hopefully more things are going to be appealed. What's happening is that my lack of reinstatement is being appealed, but this grievance definitely should be appealed as well. But in July 2024, the union had decided not to appeal the procedural grievances or the findings of harassment, which I find is shocking. And I'm still pushing to have that happen. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so that's kind of the general background. Then we have the sequence of events. I just wanted to provide this. People can listen and then figure out whether they think that was normal, what occurred, and whether there was no unsafe workplace that existed. And I find it very strange because we're always hearing about safety whenever we talk about universities these days, that students feel unsafe because they're going to hear an idea with which they disagree with. So that's seen as being legitimate. But the sequence of events that I'm going to relay to you over the next few minutes, that I shouldn't believe that that's unsafe and that my workplace was unsafe or unhealthy with these things occurring. Anyway, let me go through the sequence of events. So the day began just like an ordinary day during that time of year. On December 20th at 11 a.m., I attended an Indigenous Studies hiring talk for the candidate Robert Caldwell. And that's when I saw Mike Quinn. I didn't see him very often, but he was on this meeting. He asked a question, as I remember. A number of other people asked questions. And then I was on the Zoom call and I asked a question. And that was at 12:06. I sent it to Jennifer Pettit. And then I asked the question because he was giving a talk on maps, map making and colonialism. And then I asked how researchers should deal with historical circumstances when some Indigenous groups push out earlier inhabitants. That was the question. And I'm just posting this to show you, the kinds of normal activities I was engaged in at noon that day. I did not know at that time that sometime that day, I don't know the exact time, the president of MRU signed a termination letter for me. And in this termination letter, he stated that I was obligated to provide my exams to the Office of the Dean of Arts on December 21st, 2021. So the next day. So I was supposed to provide my exams the next day. That was what Tim Raleigh had stated in this termination letter. And this is just showing you where on this term. If you want to look at the entire termination letter, it's available in the Francis Widdowson firing area. And that I was supposed to contact Sarah Gibson to give her my keys and so on. So this is what was expected as far as I understood it. So by the president. So that's what he's issuing as his directive, which we'll see Mike Quinn, Sarah Gibson, and Tanya Snow didn't seem to get the memo with respect to this situation because they behaved with different expectations. And that's an interesting question as to why that occurred. So from 3 to 6, I gathered everything together before this, and then I went over to B101, this is the main building as the east entrance. And this is over here on the right-hand side is the arts building. And so in this area where the red circle is, that's where B101. And then on the other side, you'll see there's this block. That's the classrooms on the other side of the hallway, which is going to become pertinent shortly. And after the exam was done, so during this exam, I was talking to a student about an outstanding paper after 5:15. So about 5:30, I gathered everything together. I had a whole bunch of exams, 60 exams in my arms. I'm walking back to my office to start grading them. And it's dark outside, it's cold. I'm kind of exhausted from the whole day. And I'm looking forward to going home and having a nice cup of cocoa or something like that. And I hear this Dr. Widdowson behind me. And I thought it was a student. because I'd just done this exam. And then I turned around and it was Mike Quinn. We were both wearing masks, so it was COVID, but I could tell it was Mike Quinn. And he sort of said that we met before, and I said yes, we had, and because I was at his hiring talk a few years before. And then he just said to me casually, could you just step in here for a minute? And I was, because I'd been on this hiring committee or like the hiring talk with on the Zoom call, I just assumed that was what this was about. He was an academic position, so he'd be talking to me about academic matters. And I thought, in fact, that the hiring committee was probably in that room, and they were having a discussion, and they wanted to hear my views about the candidate. So I said, okay. Quinn opened the door, and I walked in. And as I walked in, I saw Sarah Gibson, who was an HR representative, sitting at the table with another woman who I wasn't sure who it was at that time. Anyway, I knew it was Gibson because I had been involved with her. She was sitting in on this meeting that happened on December 13th, a week earlier, with Provost Elizabeth Evans, which is an amazing meeting in its own right, where Elizabeth Evans kept on trying to get me to accept responsibility and show remorse for my conduct. And I kept on saying, I can't accept responsibility because I was completely unaware that, social media activities were covered by MRU's policies, because I had been enduring, if we're going to call it harassment over many years. And in terms of showing remorse, I was just defending myself against a mob that had formed that was trying to get me fired. So why shouldn't MRU show remorse for not really protecting my academic freedom? That was kind of my position on it. Anyway, you can listen to that entire struggle session if you're interested in that. And then, as I mentioned, sitting across from Sarah Gibson was Tanya Snow, who's an outside consultant. Quinn asked me to sit down with them, and then I said I would not participate in this meeting because I needed my union representative there. And I tried to leave the room, and then Quinn blocked the door, so I wasn't able to get out. And that's when I became panicked, completely panicked, because here I was with three people who were opposed to my interests. It was late. It was 5:30. There was no one around. I had been lured into this room. I had no way of, interacting with anyone who could be supportive of me. And Quinn was blocking the door. I had no idea what was going to happen. And I panicked. I felt this was a seriously unsafe situation. And I told Quinn, "You're forcibly confining me." And he stepped out of the way of the door, and I rushed through, and I was in a completely panicked state. And I said, "Send me notice to meet, and I'll meet with you." And this document here is from Sarah Gibson when she was talking to the police, and she confirms that Quinn stood between the door and me, and that I said to them that we couldn't do this without representation. So I made this known to them, and that I told Quinn that this was forcible confinement. Anyways, in a completely panicked state, I just didn't know my head was just spinning. I ran back to my office and I tried to contact the union, but MRU had locked my computer down. And so I had no numbers. I had no way to get in touch with the union. And then I contacted a colleague and asked her to call the union. And this happened, this email was sent at 5:49. So I must have called her at about, 5:40, according to her. So I was in my office, and I didn't know at the time, but according to Sarah Gibson, Amy Nixon, the general counsel, had told people to go to my office. I told administrators to go to my office. This is what she said to the police. So that's amazing that they would do that after having this huge altercation and everything. Why wouldn't they just pull back? Since my termination letter had said that I was supposed to turn things in the next day, why are they now insisting that all these things have to be done that evening? Anyway, so when I was in my office, I gathered together the things that I wanted to make sure I didn't lose. I tried to leave, and Mike Quinn was again outside the door. He had this envelope that he was trying to push into my hands. I was holding this box, so I didn't. There's a crowd of administrators, about 10 administrators, I think, in front of the policy studies office, and there's a security guard, 2 security guards positioned at either end of the hall, which looked like it was going to block my way and prevent me from leaving. I had no idea what was going on. That led me to have, enter into a panic state again. And I was yelling at Quinn to go away and stop intimidating me. And at that time, Dwayne Bratt, who was in his office, came running down the hall and asked if I was okay. And I said, no, I was not. And I didn't know what else to do in this panic state. I had no representatives helping me. So I just phoned 911 because I didn't know what else to do. And I said that, I'd been forcibly confined. And then I decided I should probably leave because I didn't know what was going to happen, and talk to the police outside. And Quinn was trying to get me to leave my exams, which again is in contradiction to what the president has said I should be doing. And I told him, don't stay away from me, don't touch me. I thought maybe I would be wrestled to the ground. I had no idea what was going to happen. I was very alarmed. And I said, don't touch me. And I walked, didn't know what was going to happen at any time. I walked out the door, walked down to my car. I was like an automaton. And I opened the back door, put my box in the back. And I got into my car, locked the doors. And it was at that point where I just started to become hysterical. I was just in such a state. And I talked to Lee Easton, and I talked to Albert, my husband. And Lee was saying, can I come there? What should I do? I said, yes, come. And I was really, really upset. And anyway, the police arrived. There's the body cam footage that you can take a look at. You want to see what happened on that night. And then, just must have been immediately after I left the building, Jennifer Pettit, the Dean of Arts, sent an email to all the chairs of departments. And this includes people like Mary Lee Mulholland, who testified at my arbitration hearing, and everything that she said was refuted. And so I'll have a lot more to say about Dr. Mulholland at a later date. All sorts of other Faculty of Arts chairs got this notice. And just so you know what she said, I'm writing to inform you that Frances Widdowson is no longer employed as a faculty member at Mount Royal University. We are making plans to ensure that her students this semester and next are supportive. Now, I was going to be marking their exams. I've been with them all term, and they allowed me to mark another bunch of exams. So obviously that wasn't in question. So, why wouldn't they have allowed me to mark their exams if they're concerned about the students? Anyway, this was obviously an attempt to, basically tell everyone in the Faculty of Arts that, this terrible person who's been making everyone feel unsafe, you don't have to worry about her. Seems to be what was going on. Anyway, after I talked to the police, I went to a local bar, Spot On, met with Lee Easton, and he basically talked to Amy Nixon and said, yes, someone could come pick the exams up tomorrow, which was the day that they were supposed to be submitted anyway, and, return my keys and all these kinds of things. So when I drove home, I was in a completely disassociated state. I don't think I've ever had an experience like that again. I seriously considered driving my car off the road. I remember thinking that, and I was basically suicidal, having suicidal thoughts. But then I got home and I was talking to Albert. I was talking to my colleagues, and I started to say, get a hold of yourself. Stop. You have to take control of this situation. But I had serious psychological problems for the next month because of this incident. And then at this time, so that was about 7:30 or so, I guess, this was happening. And at the same time, we had board members from my union, Rafi Kurji, who's the treasurer, and Mr. Kurji was celebrating my termination on social media, and it was being retweeted by Tim Haney, who evidently takes great exception to seeing himself as part of a gang, people who are ganging up on me. This is something that's upsetting for him, evidently, which seems to be borne out by the various Twitter activity. And then 8:34, Milena Razankowska, the diversity and equity officer, she replies to Kurji with her meme, "I'm Santa Claus." So she thinks she's given him this gift. I wonder how that's the case. That happened at 8:34. And then we have at 9:02, Roberta Lexier, member engagement officer. Again, she's celebrating, saying that this is like a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds. And it's a happy day, that what's happened to me is a really, great thing. And one looks at these things, and these are board members. These are board members who are supposed to be representing faculty members fairly, transparently, equally, in good faith. And that really has to make you wonder the kind of representation that I was getting from the union. And that's something I still continue to wonder about. Anyway, I'll be talking more about that at another time. Anyway, so the next morning, December 21st, a representative dropped by, gave me another memo, and it says that, the other night, the previous night, that there was just an attempt to provide me with the notification, and I proceeded to push Dr. Michael Quinn out of my path and fled towards the exit, refusing to engage. So that's how they saw my actions, or how they chose to portray my actions that day. Anyway, so that is what occurred on December 20th, 2021. That is 3 years ago today, exactly. I think that it's up to audience members to decide whether what happened after hours, that it was dark, no one was around, I was ambushed, not expecting anything, lured into a room, not allowed to have union representation, followed back to my office with 2 security guards and 10 administrators, Jennifer Pettit sending out an email assuring everyone that I was no longer around. All of these things are indicative of trying to paint me as some kind of terrible threat to justify the treatment that I received for many years at Mount Royal University, trying for years to have discussions about initiatives such as indigenization. And these problems began in about 2014 with Kathy Shaler, an equity, diversity, inclusion hire, starting the process of indigenization, officially declaring this to be official policy, and an equity workshop put on by the Canadian Association of University Teachers, where we were encouraged to have land acknowledgements on our syllabi and so on. That was the beginning of these problems. And then things became worse and worse and worse, to the point where my entire workplace was being poisoned, because the expectation was that I should defer to this prescribed doctrine of equity, diversity, inclusion, and indigenization being one part of that. And so it is my contention that this official prescribed doctrine is what made it impossible for me to continue to try to have rational arguments at Mount Royal, which was a wonderful institution in 2008, but has been completely taken over by these ideologues who think it's perfectly acceptable to celebrate my termination and everything that I had to go through in trying to defend the academic mission of Mount Royal University. Anyway, think about those events that took place. Take a listen to the various recordings and decide for yourselves whether I acted in a manner that was inappropriate and there was no reason for me to act in the way that I did, and that it was perfectly acceptable what Mount Royal did on the evening of December 20th, 2021, exactly 3 years ago today. I'll be holding an event at 5 p.m. Mountain Time to go into a few more of the actual things that happened on that evening. Thank you very much for listening.